Have you had enough coffee today?
No.
Okay, let's do more. Okay. Would you like to?
No, you're the one.
Okay, so.
You need to start because
Yeah,
you need to get
sure.
your grievances off your chest.
Believe it or not, Ryan, as I read further in the book, the story got progressively better. With most books, the author has to set up the plot and
Right.
the characters, but this one just felt different in that I don't know. I just didn't like how it started for some reason.
Dude, so the problem wasn't the writing or the writing style; it was the actual plot that you were struggling with.
It was sort of both to begin with. I don't know what. It just seemed very disjointed at the beginning.
Okay. I mean, usually they say that if sometimes if you can't say exactly why, it usually means there is just something there that didn't. I was the opposite end.
Did you love it though?
I mean, out of 10, I'd probably give it a station 11. I really did.
Really?
I really did enjoy it.
I really liked how she brought all of the pieces together, or things came more into focus as the story.
Right.
I didn't love it. I just ended up liking it.
Yeah. I mean, it was all about connections and even basically at the end of the world, people are just still so connected and they don't even realize, like a ripple effect throughout. Arthur's main goal was to be remembered, and in this weird way he was, yet it wasn't necessarily him, but the effect he's had on all these different places. There was some things that I, like, okay, so Jeevan, is that how you say it, Jeevan? That's how I said it.
That's how I pronounce
Okay.
it. Yeah.
I was more curious about him and like if his story tied in more, because he seemed like such a big part at the beginning, and by the
That's
end,
what I thought too.
he kind of just, I mean, he's mentioned and you know where he's at, but it just, wish you would have went a little bit more with him and how it all kind of, you had Arthur was all connected, Miranda, Elizabeth,
his three
wives, the little girl, like all,
yeah.
Kristen, like they were all so intertwined, and she spent so much time with Jeevan and Frank at the beginning. It just kind of seemed like there was the circle here and then
the satellite. What did you think about the timeline of it all? I mean, because you would think that in a 20-year span of time that things would be a little, I mean, I don't know, better or developed from that point on.
Yeah, I think she wanted to focus more on the relationships than the shoot 'em up of the road, basically. There was a couple of scenes where, like, she implied the bad stuff that happened, but she wanted to show there was still good stuff with like the knife tattoos. Like everyone knew what they meant, but she wanted to focus more on that humanity can still be good and not all animalistic.
Oh yes, Elizabeth and her son Tyler. Do you think they were optimistic, or what's the other word that I was trying to think of? Or in denial?
I'd say it's more denial.
Yeah.
I would.
I kept thinking of Nietzsche's quote whenever they came up, because it seems like, well, and the quote is something like, people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. And I think that's true for like a lot of people.
Right.
But I mean, especially in their case, it didn't seem like they were just willing to accept what was happening.
Without trying to get into a religious debate of some sort, they lived in Jerusalem, like the pinpoint of religion, and then And then Tyler had his New Testament. He went too far. He tried to take on that role himself, but in like the worst way possible.
That's what I was going to ask you. She didn't really state outright that he was the prophet in the book, but don't you think?
Oh no,
right?
Oh, he definitely was. He definitely was.
Okay.
And I picked up on that fairly early in the airport.
Really?
Yeah. How he would play the game and then he would read and then he started reading the New Testament and then he went out to the plane. And about that point I was like, oh.
See,
I know
didn't.
where this is going. And then the people came, the religious group came, and when they left with them, I was like, he's taking over.
See, I didn't even put the two together. Yeah. I mean, until later on in the story.
I feel like there was so many just little things that connected everyone.
That's what I really liked about it, I think.
It was one of those, though, that near the end, I kept slowing down a little bit because I didn't want it to quite be over.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't like it that much.
Yeah, I had full intentions to finish it about Saturday.
And I did read a little bit, but then Colby and I started, she asked me if I ever heard of that Squid Game show. I was like, what's Squid Game show? I was like, yeah, I heard of it, but I don't really know what it is since I don't like to know what things are. And she was like, well, you want to watch an episode? I was like, yeah, because I'm trying to slow down with this book. So we watched an episode, and next thing you know, we're done with all 9 episodes. And
ended up finishing it much too late last night. But not in a bad way. Not like that I was trying to put it off in like a Shuggy Bane style where it's like I don't want to be depressed right now.
Yeah.
I just wasn't quite ready for it to end. And sometimes you get to the end of the book and you just naturally speed up a little bit. I didn't want to do that, so I kind of paced myself. I was much more hopeful. I mean, she ended on that note where there was the lights in the distance. That surprised me. I'm surprised it took them so long to figure out electricity. I mean, granted, I don't think I could figure out if it was to happen to us now and there was no power, I wouldn't be able to just do it. But it surprised me that collectively it took them people so long.
20 years though? That just seems, I mean, so the time span just sort of threw me off as well. I just thought that was way too long.
I didn't mind it.
Really?
I guess she wanted everyone to be older and she wanted there to be people that didn't know the difference. So take something like, take a tragedy like 9/11. We're at the point now where there's people that remember it happening and then there's young adults who that's something that happened before they were born and yet they still see the ramifications of it. So maybe that's what she was going for, putting the time span. So there's children that only know the past, because she spent a lot of time talking about, the phones and should they teach history or should they teach the history of what a plane was. So I think she needed to spread it out to have that distinction between the memory and those that had memories prior and those that have no memory prior. So this is all they knew. So the fact that they didn't have power wasn't strange for some of the teenagers.
All right, I mean, I guess that makes sense then. Okay.
But this is just a guess. This is just a guess.
I mean, I'll take it. So you don't think 10 would have been long enough?
Well, you would have only had some 9-year-olds. And I guess you wanted some, like the kid who killed the prophet.
All right.
His age was someone who wasn't pre-Georgia flu, is what they hinted at. He was he only knew afterward. There's a lot to dive into. But
do you? Is that noise? Are you surprised that it ended with Clark? When I didn't think he was. What is that noise?
But yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, I just didn't think. We first came to know him at the dinner party, right?
Right.
That was given by Miranda and Arthur.
He ended with Clark because he was, out of everyone there, he was the oldest character, like basically in the world, essentially, because they said that, most people died by 60, that 60 was considered old age, and the children were like scared because they found out people used to live to 80, and Clark was pushing, 70, 75. She ended with him because he was the largest bridge between what was in the
Yeah.
future, because he's the one that showed the lights to Kristen, and so maybe he was just more of the bridge between the two,
Okay.
the past and the future.
The old and new world.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take it.
It was like the fatal flaw
Oh,
of the book.
Yes, the fatal flaw. Well,
Do you know what it is?
Yes,
or should I go ask Barbara?
Tammy and Barbara. She actually told me because we discussed this before I came in. They were wondering why books didn't play a more relevant part, like just the libraries and just the information that they can glean
Right.
from the books to sort of do and make what they need to make, or
Yeah, like the electricity thing. Like, there's bound to have been a book somewhere that showed how to.
there had to have been an electrician alive somewhere.
Yeah, but yeah, now
Yeah.
that they mention it.
Mhm.
But I mean, they had obviously had Shakespeare,
Mhm.
and they obviously had the small library because the person made the newspaper, and they got the hotel sheets, and I'm sure there was a library in that
Yeah.
town.
I mean, I'm sure she had her reasons. The book came together a lot better than I expected.
Yeah.
I ended up liking it. So
What would you give it, man, out of 11?
8 or 9, I guess.
Oh, that's pretty high.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah,
high.
I enjoyed it more, once I got past just the part where she just had to set everything up. And then once I sort of started to realize what she was doing, I mean, I guess it made a little more sense. I don't know if I was just trying to analyze it too early or too quickly, but
See, I liked all that setup stuff.
really?
Yeah.
Ah.
See, I didn't think some of the setup stuff got played out as much later. Like I said, with like Jeevan, that was a lot of setup, and it just kind of
Yeah,
disappeared.
he just sort of fizzled out. I ended up liking it, so that's the.
How did you like reading it during our own little pandemic?
Sorry. I don't know what happened. It just. I'm not sick. I promise. I'm not sick.
That's what they all say.
Not nice, but it was interesting to compare our experiences to what they went through.
For being written, 4 years prior to it happening,
Yes,
she acted. It seemed like it was realistic.
Oh, I agree.
Now, granted, hers was a lot worse, but just the little
Well,
thing, the grocery stores,
Yeah.
and how people acted, and just I don't know. She did a really good job of what a pandemic would have been like.
It was published in 2014, so I actually
okay,
had
6 years prior.
I actually had to check the date when I was reading this. I mean, because I was really surprised at how well she developed it prior to.
I don't think she could have told it
No.
linearly. I think if she started with Arthur and Miranda's relationship and ended with Clark, it wouldn't have worked out. But the fact that she flowed through time and space.
Because I've always wondered about this. I always saw it on the shelf, and I just thought I'll have to read that one day.
I'm just glad I didn't have to know anything about King Lear to understand it. Oh yeah, next time, for real this time, we'll finally get to the Lady in the Black Lagoon that we've mentioned a lot.
I always think of that children's book every time that comes up, and that's what it was about.
Yeah, you're gonna be quite surprised.
Okay, all right.
Oh, and then Squid Game.
It's a Korean show on Netflix. And the little blurb, I'm leaving it the little blurb, but hundreds of cash-strapped individuals play children's games with deadly consequences.
You are kidding.
It was pretty neat. There was.
Because there was, I guess, I don't know if you're trying to set up for another season of it or something, because there was some big things, they had some big questions that they just left unanswered. Okay. But it was the games, when they started playing the game, the way they filmed it and edited it, it was very intense.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was pretty
Would you
neat.
highly recommend it?
Yeah. These characters called the VIPs was just about the worst acting.
Squid Game?
Squid Game.
Game.
Game. Squid Game.
Okay.
Squid Game. Well,
All right.
is it?
Another one down.